I was 36 when I met Bernardo at the mall. I was picking up a gift for my niece and he bumped into me on the escalator. It was one of those meet cutes you see in a rom-com, you know? He apologized with that perfect smile, offered to buy me coffee to make amends, and I, being naive, thought it was the height of chivalry. I'm Marielle, a freelance graphic designer. I lived alone in a rented apartment down in Santa Monica and was still recovering from the loss of my mother, who had died from a massive stroke 18 months earlier. And honestly, that had utterly devastated me because we were incredibly close. She was my best friend. I've always been one of those insecure people who feels the need to constantly prove they're worthy of love. My father started a new family when I was a kid, maybe 7 years old, and I grew up with that awful feeling of being replaced, of never being anyone's priority, that kind of scar that stays with you forever. Bernardo seemed to be everything I'd ever wanted. He was attentive, successful, the type who opens the car door and pulls out your chair at the restaurant. You know those guys who look like they stepped out of a cologne ad? That was him. He was an entrepreneur, 41 years old, working as an agent for professional soccer players, representing athletes from big teams like the LA Galaxy and LAFC. His Instagram was full of photos in stadium luxury boxes, dinners with famous people. You'd look at him and think, man, this guy made it. He wore dress shirts even on weekends, always smelled incredible. A pricey watch on his wrist, that aura of a successful man that impresses anyone. And I was in such a vulnerable phase of my life, still grieving, still trying to figure out how to move forward without my mother. The first 3 months were a fairy tale. There's no other word for it. He'd text me, "Good morning," every day at 6:47 a.m. sharp. I found it sweet that it was always at the exact same time. He'd bring me red roses, the expensive kind, to my office. He introduced me to his parents in the second week of dating, which I thought was strange but interpreted as seriousness, like, he's taking this seriously, he wants me to meet the family. His mother, Donna Celia, was a devout evangelical, and he attended church every Sunday. He was even a deacon, helping with the services and offering prayers for the sick. And I thought, a man of God doesn't cheat, doesn't lie. How idiotic I was. Truly idiotic. The first red flag was subtle, disguised as care. We were planning to have dinner with my friends, Marisa and Janaina, at a restaurant in the Arts District. And half an hour before we left, he looked at me and said, in that calm voice, "Honey, are you going to wear that top? It's a little too low cut. I don't think it's good for you to draw that much attention. People will stare. They'll think the wrong thing." I changed immediately, putting on a long-sleeved shirt even though it was 86 degrees outside. I thought he was being protective, looking out for me, safeguarding my image. But I didn't know yet that this was just the beginning, that every concern of his was actually a fence being built around me, brick by brick. Then, 6 months in, after we moved into his apartment because he said, "Paying 2 rents is a waste. Come live with me, we're together every day anyway," things truly started to shift. And look, he never yelled, he never raised his voice, but his silence was a sharp weapon that cut deeper than any scream. It was worse than any insult. When I did something wrong, and I never quite knew what it was, he would simply stop talking to me. 2, 3, sometimes 5 days of absolute silence. The kind that makes the air heavy. You know, the kind that suffocates you. He'd get home from work at 7 p.m., eat dinner in silence, watch TV without addressing a single word to me, and go to sleep with his back to me in bed, as if I were a ghost, as if I didn't exist. I would plead, seriously, sometimes I'd be on my knees. "Bernardo, for God's sake, tell me what it is. We can talk, we can fix this. Tell me what I did. I can't take this silence anymore." He'd look at me with those cold, empty eyes and reply in that low, controlled voice, "I have nothing to say to you. When you behave like an adult woman, when you mature, then we'll talk." And that was it. He'd retreat back into silence. I'd spend those days rotting inside, scouring my memory to guess my mistake, apologizing for things I wasn't sure I'd even done, cooking his favorite meals, keeping the apartment spotless, trying to win back his attention. But before all that got truly worse, there were other signs I completely ignored. Like, he started going through my phone when I was in the shower. I'd leave it charging in the living room, and when I came back, I'd see that notifications were cleared. Messages were read that I hadn't opened. When I asked, he'd get annoyed. "Oh, Marielle, stop the paranoia. I just checked who texted. Couples shouldn't have secrets." But when I picked up his phone to check the time, he would snatch it right out of my hand. "Hey, privacy, respect my privacy." I found the contradiction odd, but swallowed it, never questioning him further. He also started controlling my clothes in an increasingly intense way. It wasn't just the low-cut top anymore. It was everything. Jeans that were too tight. "Looks like you're trying to show off." A dress above the knee. "You're too old for that kind of stuff. You're 37, not a teenager anymore." Heavier makeup. "You look like a clown. Who are you trying to look pretty for? You've already got me." And the worst part is, he'd say all of this with the look of someone giving advice, as if he were helping me avoid embarrassment. I started internalizing it, believing that I really was overdoing it, that I was too old for certain things, that I was being vulgar without realizing it. Outings with my friends became rarer and rarer. He never outright forbade them. It was more subtle than that. When I'd say, "Honey, I'm meeting Marissa this Friday night," he'd get a sad look and say, "Oh, but I was going to make that special dinner you like tonight. It was going to be our night, right? But fine, go with your friends. I'll just stay here alone." Then came that awful guilt, that heavy feeling in my chest, and I'd end up canceling. Or he'd agree, but then he'd be moody all day, that heavy silence again. And when I came back from the outing, he wouldn't even ask how it went. He'd just turn to the wall and sleep. The next day, the cold shoulder would continue. I learned it was easier not to go out. It was easier to give up my friends than to endure days of psychological punishment afterward. Marissa tried to warn me. She was the first and the most persistent. One Saturday afternoon, August 12th, 2023. I remember the date because it was our one-year dating anniversary. I'd even bought him a gift, an expensive dress shirt he wanted. We were having coffee at her place, that small but cozy apartment of hers full of plants. I was crying so hard, telling her about yet another silent treatment that had lasted 4 days. She squeezed my hand and looked me straight in the eye. "Mari, listen to what I'm about to tell you, and listen carefully. This is not normal. A healthy relationship is not like this. He is manipulating you, making you feel guilty for things you didn't do, for things that might not have even happened. This has a name. It's called emotional abuse, psychological abuse, coercive control." I got angry at her in that moment. I was furious. I defended Bernardo tooth and nail. "You don't understand, Marissa. You don't know him like I do. He has so much stress at work, dealing with multi-million-dollar contracts, problematic athletes calling at all hours. The pressure is enormous. You have no idea what he goes through." She sighed deeply, looked down and said softly, "Okay, Mari. But when you want out of this, when you open your eyes, I'm here. I'll always be here." I left her place that day feeling strange, a little hurt, a little mad, and it took me 3 months to speak to her properly again. He had succeeded, folks. He was isolating me from my friends, and I didn't even realize it. I thought I was defending my relationship when I was actually sinking deeper and deeper. The financial control also started subtly. He was a master at making things sound reasonable at first. He suggested I close my bank account and use his. "To make things easier, honey. We're a couple. We have to share everything. Be transparent. Separate accounts are for people who don't trust each other." I foolishly agreed without question. I transferred the $8,400 I had saved over 2 years of hard work to the joint account he opened. At first, he'd even let me use the card, but he always asked to see the receipts afterward. "Honey, show me what you bought, just so I can track our spending. We need to be financially organized." Then he'd start questioning, "You spent $80 at the grocery store on what? That's too expensive." Or, "You bought that $150 top? Didn't we agree to save?" I became increasingly afraid to spend anything, feeling guilty for every dollar I used. 2 months later, when I wanted to buy an online motion design course that cost $450 to update my professional skills, get more clients, and actually earn more money. He looked at me and said, "Honey, we're tight this month. The electricity bill was high, $380. The HOA fees went up. Let's push that course to next month." But the following weekend, he had bought imported Nike sneakers for $200. A huge Nike box arrived at the apartment. When I questioned him very gently, very carefully, I just said, "But honey, what about the sneakers you bought? I thought we were tight on money." That icy glare returned, the one that gave me the shivers. "I work. I support this house. I pay all the bills here. I decide where the money goes. Or are you contributing something I don't know about? Your little freelance jobs barely cover lunch." That was the first time I felt true fear of him, genuine physical fear. Not fear of being hit, but fear of being trapped, of having nowhere to go, of not having the money to even call an Uber if I needed to run, fear of being completely at his mercy. From that day on, he took the card back. He said he would give me an allowance of $600 a month for my personal expenses. $600, folks, to buy pads, shampoo, cleaning supplies, everything. And I had to account for every single cent. He kept the receipts in a folder and reviewed them at the end of the month. "You spent $15 on what here on the 12th? I felt like a child being controlled by a parent. No, worse than that, I felt like a prisoner. His friends thought he was perfect, like the exemplary guy. "Bernardo is a great guy, a true gentleman. You lucked out, Marielle," they'd say. In front of others, he treated me like a queen. He'd put his hand on my waist, pull me close, call me my love, my princess, post our photos on Instagram with super romantic captions like, "the love of my life," "my queen," that sort of thing. But once the front door closed, once the audience was gone, I was a nobody again. A piece of furniture he barely noticed was there. I started having anxiety attacks. I'd wake up in the middle of the night at 3 or 4 a.m. with my heart racing, sweating cold. I'd bite my nails until they bled and hurt. I had this knot in the pit of my stomach that never went away. He noticed and would comment with disdain, "You're very high-strung, Marielle, very out of control. You should see a psychiatrist. I think you have some serious mental problem, maybe depression. I don't know. This isn't normal." I even scheduled an appointment with a psychiatrist, paid $500 for the consultation, thinking the problem truly was with me, that I was sick, unbalanced. Today, I know the problem was always him, always. But then something happened that changed everything. In January 2024, the 15th, he traveled to Miami to close a deal with a player who was moving to an international team, a big business deal. He was supposed to be gone for 4 days, returning on Friday. On the second day, a Tuesday, he called me at 11:17 p.m. I remember the exact time because I looked at the digital clock on the nightstand, finding it odd he never called late. "Hi, honey. How are you? Everything okay there?" he said with that sweet, affectionate voice, a voice he hadn't used with me in months. We talked for 5 minutes. He asked if I'd eaten dinner, if I missed him things he never asked, and then hung up somewhat quickly. I found it strange because he never showed affection over the phone. He was always dry, direct, businesslike, barely asking how I was. I went to sleep with it bothering me. You know that feeling when you sense something is wrong but you don't know exactly what it is? That bad feeling in your gut? The next morning, Wednesday, 9:32 a.m., I was in the kitchen making coffee, still in my pajamas, when a message arrived from an unknown number with a 305 area code from Miami. "Are you Marielle, Bernardo's girlfriend?" My stomach dropped instantly. Really dropped. My hand started shaking. I was holding the coffee mug and almost dropped it on the floor. I replied yes, my heart already racing, beating so hard I could hear it in my ears. The person on the other end took about 3 minutes to reply, 3 minutes that felt like 3 hours, and then sent, "I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but he's here in Miami with me right now. He's asleep in the room. We've been dating for 8 months. I found out you existed last night when his phone rang after midnight, 1 a.m., and I saw the name Honey on the screen with a red heart next to it. I got curious, went through his phone when he went to the bathroom, and found all your conversations, all the photos. I read that message 20 times, 30 times. I couldn't process it. The words scrambled in my head. I read but didn't grasp the meaning. She started sending screenshots of their conversations identical to the ones he had with me, calling her princess, my queen, saying, "I love you so much. You're the woman of my life," talking about future plans, marriage, even having children. She sent photos of them together at upscale restaurants, at the beach in South Beach, holding hands on the Ocean Drive sidewalk, even at his parents' house, in the same living room where I had met Dona Celia, sitting on the same beige sofa where I had sat, the same parents who introduced me as the woman of our son's life, the daughter-in-law we always dreamed of. Her name was Karina. She was 28, 8 years younger than me, a sports nutritionist, super beautiful, blonde with green eyes, a defined gym body. She worked with the athletes he managed. That's how they met, at a sports nutrition seminar she gave for a team he represented. She told me everything in the crying voice messages she sent. He had used the exact same tactics with me and with her. The same phrases, the same gestures, the same empty promises. She said he told her he lived alone, that he had ended a serious relationship 2 years ago and was starting his life over. He said he had met me in August 2022 at a friend's wedding reception, that I was the groom's cousin, and that we had started dating in September. The dates matched perfectly because that was exactly when Karina and I had met him. He had built 2 complete parallel lives with detailed stories, elaborate lies, and maintained everything without either of us suspecting for 8 whole months. He took her to the same places he took me, said the same phrases, made the same promises of marriage, kids, and a future together. I vomited, folks. I literally dropped the phone, ran to the bathroom, and threw up everything in my stomach. I knelt there on the cold floor, hugging the toilet, shaking all over for about 20 minutes. I called him 14 times in a row. He didn't answer any of them. I texted, "I know about Karina. You liar, you bastard." He saw it at 10:15 a.m. and didn't reply. I stared at those 2 blue check marks on the screen, feeling a mix of rage, disgust, and despair. 2 hours later, around noon, he called with that calm, controlled, firm voice of his. "Marielle, calm down. Let me explain. It's not what you think." I screamed for the first time in a year and a half of the relationship. I screamed my lungs out. "Explain what, Bernardo? That you have another girlfriend? That you're a liar, a manipulator, a creep? What are you going to explain? The photos? The conversations? The 8 months of cheating?" He let out a short, dry, even mocking laugh and said with disdain, "You're being hysterical, Marielle. Very hysterical. Karina is crazy, completely nuts. She invents things. She wants to ruin me, destroy my career. She's a gold digger after my money. I can't believe you're listening to a lunatic like that. I thought you were smarter." I hung up on him, blocked his number, blocked him on WhatsApp, on Instagram, everywhere. I called Jana Ina, whom I had also pushed away under his pressure over the last few months, my hand shaking so hard I could barely dial. I told her everything between sobs, crying, stuttering, barely able to form sentences. She didn't say, "I told you so." She didn't judge me. She just said firmly, "Grab your things right now. Take everything that's yours and come to my place. Now, Marielle, don't wait for him to come back." I grabbed a big suitcase, the blue one my mom had given me, threw in my clothes without folding them, my laptop, my documents ID, social security card, work permit, the few pieces of jewelry I owned, photos of my mother, everything with sentimental value. I left the key on the kitchen table, along with a note that just said, "Don't look for me again." It was 3:32 p.m. on a Wednesday in January, the 17th. It was scorching hot. The sun was blistering, and I remember thinking as I closed that door, "This is the first day of my freedom. I am walking out of prison." He returned from Miami 2 days later, on Friday night, and the real psychological terror began. He called 40, 50 times a day from different numbers, from friends' numbers, from his company's line. He sent messages saying I was crazy, unbalanced, that I had abandoned the relationship for no reason, that he was going to sue me for defamation, for slander, that he would destroy me, ruin my reputation. Then he'd completely change his tune. Honey, come back. I love you. I love you so much. We can fix this. We can talk. It was all a misunderstanding. Karina lied. She fabricated everything. I blocked his number. He created other numbers. He had his mother call me. Donna Celia called me one Sunday afternoon and said with that saintly voice, "Marielle, my son is suffering so much, truly so much. He's not eating, he's not sleeping. He is a man of God. He would never do what you're accusing him of. You are believing the enemy's slander. Come back home, daughter. A wife must forgive. She must be submissive. She must care for her man." I blocked her too. Blocked his entire family. I sought out a therapist, Dr. Fernanda, a young woman, about 35, very attentive, with a small but welcoming office full of cushions and plants. In the first session, on February 5th, 2024, at 2 p.m., I arrived feeling like the worst person in the world, guilty for ending it, for abandoning him, for not trying harder, for not giving him more chances. I was in an awful state. I had lost 13 pounds, had deep, dark circles under my eyes, and bit my nails until they bled. My hair was falling out from the stress. She listened to me for 50 minutes without interrupting once, just writing everything down in a purple notebook, nodding occasionally. At the end, when I finished telling the whole story, she put her pen on the table, looked me right in the eyes, and said something that changed everything in my life. Something I will never forget. "Marielle, you were a victim of severe, systemic, planned psychological abuse. What you suffered has a name: emotional abuse, gaslighting, coercion, coercive control, narcissistic manipulation. You were not crazy. You were never crazy. Your intuition was right all along. You were just taught not to trust it. He taught you to doubt yourself. That was his goal." I cried for 2 hours in that office, 2 straight hours. I went through an entire box of tissues. She had to get another one from the cabinet. I cried from relief, from anger, from sadness, from grief for the person I used to be. Everything mixed together. For the first time in over a year, someone validated my pain, told me I wasn't the problem, that I wasn't weak, that I wasn't being dramatic or overreacting, that everything I felt was real and valid. I started going to therapy every week, sometimes twice a week when it was really hard. When I woke up in the middle of the night with anxiety attacks and nightmares about him. Dr. Fernanda explained the cycle of abuse to me, showed me that it wasn't a coincidence that he was affectionate after a period of silence, that this was a manipulation technique called intermittent reinforcement, like those slot machines that give you a prize just occasionally to keep you playing. She gave me books to read, recommended podcasts about abusive relationships, and put me in touch with other women who had gone through similar situations. I started to understand that it wasn't just me, that there was a pattern, that men like that purposely choose vulnerable women. There was one session, I think it was the 5th or 6th, when she asked me, "Marielle, what do you feel when you think about Bernardo now?" I thought about it and said, "Pity. I feel pity for him." She smiled and said, "That's a good sign. It means you are emotionally detaching, seeing him for what he truly is, an insecure, empty person who needs to control others to feel powerful." That made so much sense to me. Rebuilding was hard, folks. I won't lie, it was very difficult, very painful, very slow. I stayed at Janaina's place for 3 months, sleeping on the pull-out couch in the living room, sharing a bathroom with her and her boyfriend Paul, who was super understanding and never complained about having a third person in the house. I helped with expenses however I could, cooked meals, cleaned the apartment, trying not to be a burden. I stayed there until I could save up enough money to rent a tiny apartment, a studio, only 280 square feet, but it was mine, all mine. I had the key in my hand. I started talking to Marisa again, scheduled lunch with her, and apologized through tears for pulling away, for doubting her. She hugged me tight and said, "I never blamed you, Mari. Never. I knew it wasn't you. It was him who manipulated you, pushed you away from me." I resumed my freelance work, landed 3 new clients in 2 months by reaching out to former clients I had lost touch with during the relationship, plus 2 more that Marielle referred to me from her office. I started earning well again, having my own money, my financial autonomy back. In June, 8 months after leaving that horrible relationship, I bought a used car with the money I saved by working like crazy, pulling extra hours, accepting every freelance gig that came my way. It's a red Fiat 500 from 2018. It had 62,000 miles on it, but it looked brand new and smelled clean. I love that car like it's a Ferrari. It's my treasure, my accomplishment, my independence on 4 wheels. There was one day in July when I was driving that little car, music blasting, singing along, and suddenly I started to cry, but it wasn't crying from sadness. It was crying from happiness, from gratitude, from relief. I thought, wow, I did it. I actually got out. I am free. I am alive. I pulled over to the side of the road and cried for about 10 minutes, releasing everything that was still trapped inside. Today, October 2025, almost 2 years after leaving that hell, I live alone in my small but cozy apartment. I pay my bills, sleep in peace, and don't have to guess anyone's mood or endure days of silence. I'm back to wearing the clothes I like. I dyed my hair red. I go out with my friends when I want. I go to the movies alone. I travel. I laugh loudly without fear. I found out I'm funny, that I have a sense of humor, that I light up a room. Who would have thought, me, who felt so faded, so insignificant? Am I dating? No. Am I ready for a new relationship? Not yet, but I'm no longer afraid of love. I no longer look at every man with suspicion. I'm still in therapy today because I understand that taking care of my mental health is just as important as taking care of my body. I'm saving money to travel solo to Hawaii in December. I've always wanted to see Maui, and now I can. I have my money, my freedom. And for anyone listening to this story who identifies with it, you are not crazy. I repeat, you are not crazy. Your fear is real. Your intuition is right. And there is life after this hell. I am the proof. His silence doesn't hurt anymore because I learned to listen to my own voice again. And you know what it says? That I always deserved more. Always deserved real respect, true love, a real partnership. And you deserve it too. If you are going through this right now, hiding in the bathroom, listening to this video with headphones so he won't hear, please seek help. Talk to a trusted friend, a therapist, but don't stay in this alone. Don't let him convince you that you are the problem. The problem is never you. It never was. Love doesn't hurt like this. Love doesn't make you afraid. Love doesn't make you feel small. And if this story touched you, share it with someone who might need to hear it too. Hit that like button if you believe every woman deserves to be free, to be respected, to be truly loved. And if you have a similar story, share it in the comments. We're in this together. Freedom is real, folks. It is real, and it's worth every tear of the fight to achieve it. You deserve to be happy. You always have. From which city are you watching? Leave it in the comments.